Yo, what up? Welcome to the channel. Today I want to talk about shadow work and how it is actually different than typical self-improvement. Now, you may never heard actually of this thing called shadow work, and this is why I first want to define it and then actually compare it with typical personal development in order to see what the differences are and which one can benefit you more. So without wasting any time, let's get straight into it. All right then, first things first, what is shadow work? Well, very simply, it's basically like just integrating unintegrated parts of yourself. Now, what does that mean? Let's say you have been born, right? You're like this child, and you grow up. Well, what happens during our grow up process is the following. We actually have a lot of parts of ourselves we start disowning. You have been taught to live up to a certain amount of standards. This is what happens in society, right? You have to go to school, right? You have to go to a job. You have to be a certain way because otherwise society won't function, right? And as a result of that, you start disowning certain parts of yourself. What happens is like we tell ourselves that those things are not us, right? For instance, let me say you're a very creative person and you like doing skateboarding, or you're very into art, or you're maybe a business person, right? You're very into business. But what happens is from your home situation, depending from the country you live in or a lot of circumstances, basically, you get domesticated, I would say, right? Your parents tell you, no, sweetie, you should do this. Instead of opening a business, you should go become, a lawyer. Or instead of being an artist who likes to paint, you should become a doctor, right? Or even if you would like to pursue your artsy dreams and your business goals or whatever you may want, but in that environment, there will be still things that has to be a certain way, right? And this is just like the process of life. You get put in a certain environment, and in that environment, certain expectations needs to be met. You have to live up to a certain standard, right? And this is basically what happens. And this is like still like a mild example because it can actually be something super bad or way worse. It can be actually extreme things as well. Like for instance, let's say you witness something very traumatic as a child, right? Basically, whatever you have disowned, whether it is a trauma, some experiences, some emotions, some thoughts, because of certain reasons, shadow work refers to the process of actually going deep into these things, you have disowned, and basically like start to own those things back again. And it sounds very complicated, but it's basically not. Shadow work is basically like all about knowing more about yourself, right? It's like the process of like going on an exploration with yourself and seeing what's actually inside of you. Because a lot of people, because of traumas, because of certain environments they live in or standards they have to live up, they disown, including me. Everybody does this, right? And so shadow work, again, is basically like the process of going into these things and like exploring those things and acknowledging those things for what they truly are. So now we know what shadow work actually is. The question now we have is, how is it different than personal development, right? And there is like one main key distinction I like to make between these two, right? So if you have you yourself as a character and you want to level up, right? You can do two things. One of those things is actually like think of the things you have to improve on and basically improve. And this is typical personal development. It basically comes down to improving your skills. You look at what skills are not good and you improve those skills, right? So this is like one way to go about it. The second way is basically thinking of why you're not good to begin with. Looking at yourself for what you actually are. And instead of trying to fix something without knowing what the core issue is, you actually start asking yourself, why is there something wrong to begin with? Why is there an issue in the first place? What's wrong, right? And this is actually the main distinction. And now you may wonder, like, how can actually, going into my issue help me? How, looking at my issue will suddenly fix the issue? Well, the argument, that I like to make when this question gets raised is actually the following. By looking at things for what they actually are, you actually know if you have a problem or don't, right? Because we usually assume that we have an issue, but we actually never look if we actually have an issue, or even if we have an issue, we never look how deep the issue is. And this is like why shadow work is so important to me and brings me into the next topic also. The reason why shadow work is so important, in my opinion, is because you actually get to discover more about yourself, right? There is this one quote, "I'd rather be wholesome than good." And I agree so much with this quote, right? It basically means everybody tries to be good, right? But the thing is, good is super relative. Good can only be good if it's like in a certain context or in a certain environment, right? The problem with this is, there is nothing wrong with being good, right? You have to meet certain expectations. We live in a society, we live with people, we have friends, we live in an environment where everybody lives, and you have to be to a certain degree good. I agree with that, definitely. But the problem I'm facing when it comes down to being good is being only good and not being actually everything you are, or more of what you actually are. And what I mean by this is basically being authentic. A lot of people forget that they have to be authentic and real, right? The thing is, if you are not real, of course you will have issues. Like, we are born in this world as a child, and just like your physical body functions well since you've been born, since you are like this human being that when you're born, everything works, right? So why should we suddenly assume our emotional system is not working anymore, or our thoughts are broken from the start, right? The thing is, if we, are born with a healthy heart, with a healthy lung, or with a healthy, with a healthy body, I also believe you are born with a healthy emotional system, with healthy thoughts, right? If, of course, you get like the right nurture, because if you don't nurture your body will also go bad. And this is the whole problem, in my opinion. We have to, pay more attention to actually what we really want and what we really are, right? We forget that we want certain things or are in a certain way because we always try to be so good. You try to please your parents, right? You try to be a good person at school. You want to be liked by others. You want to be a good person, right? And because of that, we forget who we actually are. And then, of course, we start pretending. Of course, we start being inauthentic. And of course, problem arise because of this, because then we are not only lying towards others, but we are lying towards each other, and then to ourselves also, and then it gets like this big mess. You forget who you are, you are purposeless, you don't know what you want in your life, you're just like in this blur living, right? You're just every day on social media, wasting your time, doing nothing with your life, living like this, miserable life, I would say. So knowing actually why things are they are in the first place is key. So this is why shadow work is important to me. You have to get real with yourself, look at things for what they actually are, and then from there, in my opinion, you can start working on your skill sets and improve yourself with typical personal development, right? Because if you don't do that, usually what happens is you go straight back to zero, to ground zero. You fall back in your habits, you do the same mistakes over and over again because you don't get to the core issue, right? You don't look at yourself for what you actually are. All right, quick summary of the things we just mentioned. What is shadow work? Shadow work is basically like the whole process of, going deeper into yourself, looking at the parts you have disowned from your past and actually starting to re-own those things, right? Those can be thoughts, emotions, feelings, past experiences, basically. Then how is shadow work different than normal personal development? Well, as we mentioned, shadow work is basically like going to the root cause, to the core issue, looking at things for what they actually are, asking yourself the question, why are the things they actually are, and why do I have a problem in the first place to begin with? And why is shadow work important? Well, that is because shadow work goes actually to the root cause of the issue. It looks at the issue for what it actually is and addresses the core cause. Building from there, then you can go with personal development and upgrade certain skills, habits, implement systems, but addressing the core issue is the most important thing, in my opinion. So there you have it. This is shadow work versus personal development, the difference between the two. and how you could actually utilize both in a way to make the most out of your personal growth. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know in the comments down below what you think of this concept. Do you agree? Do you not agree? Please let me also know why, if that's the case, so that I can even know, more about it and also think about it and learn more about it, right? I hope you had value. Let me know if that's the case or if that's not the case. I wish you all the best. Have a good day.